Hello, it's January 27, and I've got the pleasure of having Pepe Escobar for interview today. Welcome, Pepe.
Thank you very much, Finian. An enormous pleasure to be with you.
Thanks, Pepe. Pepe, we're going to talk about the Ukraine war and what many people perceive as the bigger geopolitical picture of that war. It's not just merely a war between Ukraine and Russia. There's something else going on. US hegemony, trying to thwart the emergence of a multipolar world, trying to preserve US unipolar power, would-be unipolar power. So, Pepe, I'm going to hand it over to you and ask you for your view on what this war is about.
Finian, thanks very much. And you touch upon my main theme for the past 11 months, in fact. I've been writing about this nonstop every week since February 2022. I'm also having some very interesting background conversations with some of my old Washington days sources, and some are friends. Some of them are deep state, old school, some retired, some are still in the background. They have a Beltway, New York connection. There are some let's say, dissident financial people in the New York area as well who find this whole thing absolutely disgusting. So they feed me absolutely priceless information from the deep state, in fact, especially from old CIA silos inside the deep state, new ones, the different neocon and neoliberal con nodes in the State Department, in the CIA, in the Pentagon, in the National Security Council. And one of them told me something absolutely extraordinary only a few days ago. He said that, look, this neocon cycles, to put it mildly, the Kagan family, Victoria Nuland, these kind of people, they could, even if it was very painful, they could stomach a Russia-China strategic partnership, which is something that everybody, even before Brzezinski, was worried about. Brzezinski, of course, was the the ultra loud emitting a red alerts all the time that we simply cannot allow the emergence of a peer competitor in Eurasia. And now the nightmare, in fact, is infinite, because it's not a peer competitor. It's a peer alliance of Russia and China. So let's assume, according to my source, let's assume that the neocons would stomach that and try to deal with that in the long run. What they could never allow to happen was a Russia-China-Germany alliance, because this would mean control of Eurasia from one pole to the other, from the European peninsula of Eurasia to the west, to the whole of Eurasia to the east, all the way to Vladivostok, right, or the Sea of Japan. So I think this is a wonderful explanation of the psychotic state of these people who are running U.S. foreign policy, in fact, because the realpolitik practitioners, they are not in charge, of course. Even old school, call him a war criminal or not, Henry Kissinger, or John Mearsheimer, realpolitik practitioners, they are not in charge. The people who are in charge are these neoliberal con cycles. So we have the old neocon wave, which is Paul Wolfowitz, Dick Cheney, everybody that was behind Bush 1 and 2. And what we call neoliberal cons, which is the Democratic Party people. Basically, not only Obama and Hillary with their own, of course, nodes and networks, of course, but donors, which are way behind, people who with real money in the East Coast establishment in the US. And of course, when they look at the erosion of US power, which has been since the humiliating retreat from Afghanistan, which is something that I was involved in for over 20 years. Afghanistan is part of my life, in fact. So, and we could never imagine that that would happen in 2021 the way it did.
Yeah.
And of course, later we got the explanation. They had to do it in a rush because they had to reorganize themselves with more firepower in Ukraine. And NATO's firepower, you would have to transfer from Afghanistan to Ukraine. And obviously the Russian intelligence, they knew that from A to Z, of course, they knew it. But at the time, it was not obvious why this humiliating retreat. There was a very serious reasons behind it. So now we are arriving at a point where what's showing, in fact, by the neocons and neoliberal cons is panic. Because everything that they thought that they could accomplish in the first 2 or 3 months after the beginning of the special military operation, which was to crush the Russian economy to bits, didn't happen. And there is no plan B. They only have that plan. You know, they threw everything against Russia, and it didn't work. 85 to 87% of the planet not only is not sanctioning Russia, but if they are neutral, they're not criticizing Russia, and some of them are deeply against it. So we have this 12% of the collective West, which they call themselves the golden billion, completely isolated in relation to the absolute majority of the planet. So everything that they tried didn't work. So now they are arriving at a crossroads where it's extremely dangerous. In fact, Finian, this is the theme of my next column, which is going to be released after our interview. They are even offering via, I don't know if many of you who are watching us, if you saw an op-ed column at the Washington Post about a week ago, where Blinken himself was dictating to the Washington Post hack in question. I won't mention his name because it's basically a CIA hack. The terms of what would be a sort of arrangement between Russia and the US. Obviously, the Russians are going to read that and say, how can we trust a single word these people are saying? Because as you know, in Moscow or in Beijing or in Tehran or in many other capitals as well, the US is seen as the non-agreement capable superpower. So everything that they say, you simply cannot trust them. But still, they are reaching a point of desperation where the deep state and one of my Washington sources told me expressly, look, usually when they have State Department stories, they plant them in the New York Times. Because the relationship of the New York Times is close relationship with the State Department, while the Washington Post is very close to the CIA. This time the message is so important that they decided to plant it and recruit somebody from the Washington Post to write it. Like, I sat down with Blinken and Blinken told me blah 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 blah. This is what happened. So I'm just waiting for the non-response from the Russians, because the Russians are going to read that. They're going to laugh. They'll say, okay, another negotiation that you escaped from last time in Istanbul. We're almost clinching a deal with the Ukrainians in Istanbul in that famous meeting that was organized by Erdogan's people. At the last minute, of course, the Americans and the Brits scotched the whole negotiation. So go ahead, Finian. Yes.
Sorry to cut in on you. Do you think, Pepe, that Washington, the imperial planners in Washington, are out of their depth? They didn't anticipate the conflict in Ukraine to go this way.
Absolutely.
They were expecting Russia to fold or to collapse a lot sooner.
You're right, Finian. I think they had two basic scenarios. One, the first one was in the first few days of the SMO, that they saw that Russia would finish it all off in 2 or 3 weeks. Obviously, that was completely unrealistic, and even from the point of view of some Russian analysts as well. And after 2 or 3 months, let's say by summer last year, they say, oh, this is going to go on. And now we have our window of opportunity to weaponize Ukraine to death. Well, it was already weaponized, but not to death. And starting a few months ago, it's to death. So throwing everything that they had, depleting NATO's arsenals, going towards Ukraine. And when you had those, I would say, small tactical victories of Ukraine a few months ago, which were not exactly victories, the Russians decided that it was not worth staying where they were, and they retreated to reorganize and then go to the places that they really want to go, which is what they're going to do when they launch their next offensive. But in this interval between, let's say, late summer last year and the end of the year, they were sure that they were going to, turn Russia into, a pretzel. I was rereading, in fact, today, 2 Atlantic Council reports that they released in October last year, including, when you look at the policy recommendations, it's everything they have been doing these past 3 months, weaponizing Ukraine to death and promising to weaponize it even more. The famous tank coalition. And now Zelensky asking for F-16s, you name it. So, but the problem is, some people inside the deep state, and I would say probably reality-based generals, they are looking at the military configuration and what's going to happen next, and they are telling the politicians, look, this looks horrible every way you look at it, and no matter what the Russians decide to do with their offensive, and wherever it goes, it's going to be a major disaster for what is left of the Ukrainian armed forces and our own NATO equipment. So that explains this Blinken proposal roughly a week ago.
Okay. Pepe, let's talk a wee bit about Taiwan and China. I mean, it seems to be a parallel tactic going on by the United States. Weaponize Taiwan, provoke China. There seems to be like a parallel plan or tactic. Would you agree on that? Are they trying to repeat what they did with Ukraine against Russia, as with Taiwan and China?
Well, I think you hit it on your second Finian. It's they are trying to provoke China to do something that the Chinese don't want to do, because the official Chinese leadership position since Deng Xiaoping and even before on Taiwan is there's going to be a peaceful reunification. It may take years, it may take decades, no problem. In Deng Xiaoping's mind, this would be 2049. So we still have we still have, 25 years ahead of us. The problem is Ukraine is being used by the US as a springboard towards Taiwan being used by the US against China. So the way these, once again, neocon and neoliberal cycles think or imagine or have their wet dreams is that the same way that we provoked Russia to invade eastern Ukraine, the Donbass, which was a serious provocation based on a number of reasons, and that's the problem to explain to a Western audience, the list of reasons that why Russia was provoked to launch the SMO at that time, a year ago. They want to create the same set of conditions in terms of Taiwan vis-a-vis China and apply the same playbook. As you probably know, and many of you, these people at the deep state in the US, they are not very creative. When they, the CIA playbook all over the world in terms of interference, instigating regime change, giving money to comprador elites, it's always the same everywhere, in every latitude. So now that they're dealing with 2 superpowers, and on top of it, an alliance of superpowers, they have no idea, and they cannot even think outside the box. You just need to read these reports in US think tanks over and over again. So, and now it's even worse, coming back to our first discussion, Finian, because the Rand Corporation just released another one of their reports where they are scared of what's ahead. So can you imagine, in a matter of 3 months, we had the Atlantic Council like rabid dogs 3 months later, you have the Rand Corporation saying, "Oh no, maybe we should." This thing in Ukraine is not working because they want to concentrate on China, on Taiwan, and they know that in terms of technological advancement, in terms of the advancement of the new Silk Roads, the Belt and Road Initiative, with the 140 countries that have joined, and the fact that this is going all over the planet, not only Eurasia, but also Africa and Latin America as well, is driving these people making US foreign policy completely crazy because they don't have a counter plan and they don't have a strategic vision on top of it.
Pepe, I mean, driving this whole war or confrontational agenda with Russia, China, you would say, I think, from what you've written before, it's all about preserving the US dollar hegemony and US perceive or would be unipolar power, the indispensable superpower. Is not what it's all about. The American capitalist system is falling apart. And they're trying to shore it up through war, through dividing the planet into Cold War camps. Would you say that's what it's, in essence, that's what it's all about? Preserving a bankrupt American capitalist system?
Absolutely, Finian. And this is what I have been following quite closely these past few months, especially when you look at what the Eurasia Economic Union and the BRICS are doing and plan to do. So I would say that these two organizations are at the forefront of trying to bypass the dollar by coming up with a new currency or an alternative currency or a basket of currencies based on gold, on commodities, or on both. This will be the main topic of discussion at the BRICS summit later this year in late August in South Africa. But it's already being discussed by BRICS diplomats, of course, among themselves for quite a while now. And the Eurasia Economic Union is even more advanced. You know, the Eurasia Economic Commission, which is the equivalent of the European Commission for the EU, for the Eurasia Economic Union, and the microeconomics minister is Sergei Glaziev. Glaziev is working on this for practically a year now. Trying to design this new currency, which according to him would be basically gold-based and commodities-based. Once they have the core of the design, they can sell this idea to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, where we have very, very important, not only Russia and China, but India, Iran, Pakistan, and the Central Asians, extremely important. And also coordinate with BRICS Plus, where you have the three major BRICS are Russia, China, and India. So we could see in the next 12 months, 18 months or so, a confluence of discussions, designs, and okay, let's intertwine everything that we're doing in terms of if you can come up with an integrated payment system outside of SWIFT, for instance. You can come up with one or two different currencies only for trade. Like Lula in Brazil has already proposed a South American common currency. Would probably start with Brazil and Argentina, the Sur, South in Spanish. And this could expand to the rest of South America. And Brazil, as a member of the BRICS, could also interconnect with the big BRICS, Russia, China, and India. So the moves all over are the most extraordinary thing compared to what we witnessed these past few decades is that now everything is coordinated, closely coordinated by these global South powers, the most important ones. And it also coordinates in energy with OPEC Plus, which is basically a deal between Saudi Arabia and Russia. And go ahead, please.
You think, Pepe, Washington is very mindful, very aware of this development as a reality, an emerging reality, which Washington perceives as a mortal threat to its, hegemony?
They see, Finian, they see the mortal threat they cannot identify it because they don't even know what's going on. Do you ever read in the Washington Post, or do you ever see on CNN, etc., anything about BRICS, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Eurasia Economic Union? Nothing. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist for the editors in American mainstream media. It doesn't exist for these people in the think tanks who issue these warmongering reports every month. So for our friend Ray McGovern has a fabulous definition for the whole thing. It's not only an industrial military complex. He calls it Missy Matt. It's industrial, military, congressional, think tank, academia, media, all together. It's like for the Missy Matt, the global South and these moves by the global South to get rid of in the clutches of the hyperpower, financial, political, geopolitical, etc. They don't exist because they don't even understand how it works. It's very, these people are, and when you talk to old school people from the deep state in the US, some of them became whistleblowers and some of them are in the background. They say, no, these people are really psychos. The people who are running the show in terms of American foreign policy, they are psychotic sociopaths, in fact. And they don't understand the other, in terms of, the other could be anywhere, could be in Africa, in Latin America, in Russia or Southeast Asia. And they don't want to understand the rest of the world. It's unilateral, it's the rules-based international order that we make the rules, and it's our way or the highway. If you don't follow us, we're going after you. The problem is, to go after Grenada is one thing, right, Finian? The other thing is to go after Russia and China.
Yeah. yeah, true, Pepe. And it goes without saying, I presume you're seeing the emergence of a multipolar world as a good thing, as a progressive development for the whole world, as the common good for the majority of the world. That would be better than what's the status quo.
In fact, it's we have to be up to, we as professionals following this dystopic dementia on a global level, we need to keep a dose of sanity in what we see ahead. Even as we age, in fact, and we acquire a little more, I would say, everyday life wisdom about how the world really works, right? I try to see it optimistically, because when you look at what these organizations, these multilateral organizations, and these powers in the global South are proposing, is a system that is not based on exploitation. It's not based on unilateral rules. It's not based on, if we don't like you, we bomb you, or we invade you, or we regime change you. And a system that will be less unequal. I'm not saying it's going to be extremely equal. We still don't know, but it's certainly going to be less unequal than the system that we are now, especially the international financial system, payment system, trade system, everything. And this does not, many people confound that with, you are defending the Russian regime or the Chinese regime or the Iranian regime. No, it's a completely different story. We are looking at processes, very complex processes that are now intertwined. We have some major players, national players, with different interests, but they're trying to find mutual interests and interests that for all of them, among the BRICS, among the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, among the Eurasia Economic Union, among OPEC, among all these organizations, in trying to set up a better system for at least most of the global population. And most of the the poor parts of the global South will benefit from it. In the case of Africa is absolutely clear. For the US, the only thing that matters in Africa is to set up AFRICOM, the African Command. So this is a military mindset. For the Chinese to go there, get 35 heads of state, say, what do you need? You need a hydroelectric plant, you need high-speed rail. Okay, you sell our stuff to us and we build stuff for you. The famous Chinese win-win.
Yeah. as opposed to the Western-based extraction capitalist
Extraction,
exploitation.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So Pepe, we'll kind of come to an end now, but basically, if we can avoid a full on war between the United States, NATO, Russia, and China, from what you're saying, there's a lot of grounds for to be optimistic, to be hopeful of the future, a peaceful future, a more just future. If this warmongering status quo can be contained or transitioned into a peaceful, peaceful way.
Well, there's the rub, Finian, because it can go downhill in a matter of days. Because on one side of the chessboard, we don't have rational people. These people in power in the US at the moment are they are not reality-based to start with. They feel cornered, which means they are even more dangerous than they were before. They cannot get away with something exactly 2 decades ago, shock and awe in Iraq in 2003. That was easy for them to get away with, even with public opinion all over the world mobilized against it. Now, if they try something similar, first of all, they cannot, because they cannot try anything similar against even Iran, not to mention Russia and China. So they feel impotent, they feel cornered, they are in panic, which is the theme of this Blinken offer to the Russians via the Washington Post. And they know that Russia is turning the military chessboard upside down in the next few weeks and months. And that will represent something that is, for them, is anathema. The complete humiliation of NATO. The NATO humiliation in Afghanistan was, compared to this, was a cakewalk. Now we're going to see the real thing. You throw all NATO's weight against Russia, and Russia, in the end, gets away with it and gets what they want. Even if it takes much more time than they thought in the beginning, which is an intel problem. Then we could go on forever discussing the intelligence behind Russia, Ukraine, NATO, etc. So it's very, very dangerous. Especially these, I would say this year is extremely dangerous, because these people can run out of control, especially when they see the Russian advances, the fact that diplomatically and in terms of trade, Russia continues to do the business the way they want to do. The fact that the Russia-China strategic partnership is very serious. The fact that they are attracting Iran and India to the way they see the new emerging world. So all the major global South players are getting into a sort of cosmic alignment. And this, from the point of view of a unipolar hegemon, it's wow. I understand how scared they are, Finian, because it's the first time in history that they are facing a situation like this.
Pepe Escobar, thank you so much for your insights and great tour de force analysis. Thanks, Pepe.
Thank you. Enormous thanks, Finian. Pleasure to be with you.
Thanks, Pepe.